Once again, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar, Boosting Enterprise Security and Seamless Collaboration, brought to you by CITIC Telecom CPC and Inspire Tech. CITIC Telecom CPC is a leading provider of innovative ICT solutions with a comprehensive suite of services, including managed cloud computing, IP networking, information security, and data center solutions. CITIC Telecom CPC empowers enterprises to achieve seamless digital transformation. Their commitment to excellence and innovation ensures that businesses can navigate the complexities of the digital landscape with confidence and agility. Inspire Tech is at the forefront of transforming global workspaces with secure, intuitive, and effective technology solutions. With over 20 years of experience, Inspire Tech has supported more than 500 organizations worldwide, providing cutting-edge platforms like EasiShare for enterprise file security. The mission of Inspire Tech is to enable seamless collaboration and robust security, ensuring that enterprises can thrive in an increasingly connected world. Together, CITIC Telecom CPC and Inspire Tech are committed to helping your organization enhance security measures and foster seamless collaboration. Now today, our expert speakers, Brian Goh from CITIC Telecom CPC and Bei Xiao Han from Inspire Tech, are excited to share insights, strategies, and solutions that will empower your enterprise to stay ahead in today's dynamic digital environment. Now, if you have any questions during the webinar, do feel free to type them in the Q&A section, and we will either answer them along the way or at the end of the presentations. So without further ado, I will now pass the time over to our first speaker, Brian Goh. Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Kam Seng. A very good afternoon to everyone who has just joined this seminar. So let me just start off with the Smart Cloud that it's coming from CITIC Telecom CPC. All right. So for a start, I go with the very beginning in terms of how it actually first started off. Everybody start with the on-prem, which is what you will see on the diagram that is stated on site. And when cloud just formed, they give these three terminologies in terms of what is IaaS, which is infra as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So the service provider that you see here actually takes care of the physical devices like your servers, your storage, networking, the virtualizers, machines, so on and so forth. But in terms of data, applications, runtime, middleware, OS will be handled by you. This is actually also targeted to companies whereby they want to stay very lean in their IT operation apps. But dramatically, in all the service providers today, they actually started off with all these three platforms just to get everyone on the same page. Infra as a service itself, IaaS actually caters to public cloud and private cloud. So it's either or, but subsequently there are also other products that actually comes and names thereafter. You can consider this as also the subcomponents of the infrastructure as a service. Okay, so for PaaS is actually mainly targeting the application developers, which is why the service provider targets all the red colors up to the runtime. So making the developers, the DevOps, to fully focus on the applications and their data. And software as a service, of course, it's really just on the subscription mode, and everything will be taken care in terms of applications, updates, patches, OS, and everything will be handled by the service providers. Okay. Now for CITIC Telecom CPC, we actually have our 4 core pillars. So technically, we are focusing on our True Connect, which is our backbone. Smart Cloud, which targets the public and the private cloud space. This two actually falls under our backbones. And subsequently, we feel that there is also a need to protect, which is why we have our information security services that take care of the cybersecurity space. And of course, at the same time, for customers who will be looking at having a echo-free environment, they will tend to move their on-prem servers to our data centers for a colo services. So all this, all in all, we come in with our in-house 24/7 help desk. We have our SOC teams. We will do the monitoring, management, and reporting. So this is actually all in all what we catered for. So of course, today our main focus is actually talking about our smart cloud. And then you would see that in terms of today's presence, CPC, we have our smart cloud major focus in terms of our Asia space. Of course, we take care of customers who might have presence in Europe and the US. So over here, this is actually where we place ourselves strategically. And in terms of the holistic offering of a smart cloud, that's where we branch it out into small components of the services. So over on my right-hand side, Smart Cloud Compute, this is actually where we term it for our public cloud. So this is where it goes back to the pure infra as a service. Okay, then subsequently we go into our private cloud. Our private cloud actually goes back to a tailor-made private cloud for end customers, which runs as OpEx models with, on top of that, our 24/7 managed services. Okay, now then coming down, we have our backups. So in terms of backups, it's cloud backups. It can also actually back up from your on-prem to the cloud, because most of the cases right now we receive are coming from compliance base. So we do manage backups for customers, and we also do run disaster recovery services to the end users, to the customers. And recently, you might actually heard of the smart cloud object storage. What is this? The object storage, in the layman term, probably you have heard of S3. So that's where we actually also catered to customers who need this object storage needs and requirement. Okay, so moving forward, this object storage backups, V1 and compute storage, this is actually still falls under the infrastructure as a service. And then moving on to smart cloud container, this is where the PaaS will come in, that is targeting for the DevOps. Okay, so all in all, for this smart cloud itself, we also have additional managed services, which we call this as smart cloud PS. And we help customers who are very lean on in-house IT to actually do extra helps. So what are the things that's been covered later? I'm going to show you. Okay, so for smart cloud compute on the public places, we have our compute resources in terms of you can share with us what is your CPU, memory, and storage requirement. And basically, we will build that for you, and given on the billing options, what would be your preference? So we have three kinds of different modes. First and foremost will be a fixed monthly rate that actually you have a very a more confirmed compute resource. And then burstables will actually help you to cater some of the daily needs or even monthly needs. So pay-G mode is pay as you go, mainly for customers who may not know exactly what would be the CPU resources that you need. And that's where you go for this mode. And this will actually be an onboarding process that we will hit into our 24/7 service help desk. And at the end of the day, the most key thing that you will look at it is in terms of CPC Smart Cloud, we do not charge egress and ingress. So basically it's a download and upload. So this is going to be a clear separation between the big boys that is right now offering. And this platform itself, we actually work with Broadcom VMware to boost up the cloud space. For Smart Cloud V1, since it's actually tailor-made to customers' requirement, so therefore we will have our specialties to grab the exact requirements of how you want to build, and we will place it into our tier 3 DC and operates like a private cloud for you. So all in all, you have all the standard 24/7 help desk plus the managed services, and on top of that, you will still get our special PS effort to take care of mainly could be your OS and your middleware. Okay. So this is actually where we also understand that customers may have certain technical constraints, and they are also looking at the cloud backups, and most of our customers actually catered for this to do an offsite backups. And we also cater to 2 scenarios. One, they have existing customers on cloud and they want to do a backup in the cloud as well. So this is where we also cater, and at the same time we cater different variations of A to C, which is what A means anytime, where. So basically, if let's say you have an on-prem and you want to back it up into the cloud in terms of smart cloud, in this case, we will actually give you an A to C cloud backups. At the same time, if you want to fulfill the requirements of the compliance, you can go for a disaster recovery cloud itself. So the platforms that supports all these requirements actually comes from Veeam and Zerto. So Veeam actually caters to 1 to 4 hours of RPO and RTO times. Zerto will caters to the near real times of RTO and RPO time. So this is actually helps to target different customers' requirement. Okay. Coming to object storage, like I said earlier on, this is actually where in most of the namespace, they will actually say that, oh, this is S3 compatible. So S3 relates to how it relates back to AWS S3, right? So we are targeting data storage, metadata, things like for legacy, and it allows some certain retentions or longer retention periods to be kept. And download or accessibility is actually through APIs. Okay, look and feel the UI is almost exactly the same, a bit similar to our traditional file explorer. Okay. So coming to the next, this would be our smart cloud container that targets the platform as a service. So in this case, we will be looking at providing the platforms in terms of Kubernetes, OpenShift, OKDs to the developers, and they will run through the application and database. So basically, this is also coming from the angles of where certain customers will have their own in-house applications to be built, and they want to try to have this thing up in the cloud for easier management of their infrastructures. Okay. So this is where the add-ons for Smart Cloud Professional Services, like I said earlier on, in-house IT might have a challenge because of different skill sets. So we cater additional help and monitoring services in terms of OS and in terms of middleware. In terms of patches, then we will work out a two-way parties agreement. Say, for example, today there is a patch that's coming in, but then this patch may affect your application runtime. So in this case, we will have to work with your in-house ITs, and then subsequently we will come to an understanding whether this patch should it be rolled out to the virtual machines. Okay. Now, after all, with all this, today we are topic on the how to do data collaborations. So in a nutshell, in today's securities, in terms of solutions, in terms of cloud space, I put in firewalls and stuff like this, but we tend to miss out the human factors, which over here by a research from Secure Frame. It comes from a 2023. You can take a look at 74%, which is quite high, that comes from human element. So in this case, why we say that we still need to take care of data itself, because it's part of our daily activities in terms of our business as usual practices and things like that. So then again, when that happens, it goes back to a self-reflection point. What is my current file sharing method? Then the answer is it secure? And then subsequently, you have another questions that coming up. how my in-house IT or in-house administrators tackles my files today. And as an end users, the owners of this data source, do you know when your files are read and edited, and who was actually this person? So this is actually where I want to pass my next topics to Shaohan for further sharing. Shaohan, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Right. Hey, thanks, Brian. So, hi everyone, and thanks to CITIC Telecom CPC for the warm welcome and having us here today, InspireTech, to actually share more about today's topic. My name is Shaohan from InspireTech, and as covered by Brian earlier on, he mentioned about data loss, right? Cost of data breach of each industry. So today I will be here to cover on today's topic, which is managing everyday's data risk in today's digital workspace. So let's just take a look at today's digital workspace. How do we actually get our work done today? In terms of digital workers or employees, we all use different tools, different business applications and systems to actually get our work done. And how do we communicate as we actually use files, right? So using files, we have been using it to connect, communicate, and collaborate with one another at any time and also any place in the world and from any devices. So what we are looking at here is actually a space where we share, we collaborate on files, be it via your email, your productivity tools, your ERP systems, etc. And also in terms of the files that we are looking at, these are all your invoices, proposal. It could be sensitive files as well, right? And when I'm actually talking about all these activities that we say here, it seems quite normal, right, to a certain extent. But the issue is we no longer observe all these small actions, or rather all these small file sharing activities or collaboration anymore, and we're actually taking it for granted. So in between all this data transaction, file sharing, have you guys actually wondered if there are any possible causes of data risk, right? So this brings me to the next point, which is data risk, right? So why should we care about all this data risk? So first point, which is the value of data has definitely gone up, right? So in terms of data, it's more valuable compared to 20, 30 years ago, where the data cannot be used for much malicious activities, etc. But today, if your personal data is leaked, right, it can be used for online banking, your SingPass login, or whichever. That can actually lead to many malicious activities without your knowing. And losing all this information can actually do harm and danger to yourself or even as an organization level. And with that, coupled with this flow and exchanges of data, right, with the rate of it being so high, if we compare previously and today, previously 10, 20 years ago, how often would you get an email, or how often would you be interacting yourself with e-copy, etc.? And you bring it back to today. Today, right, I'm sure some of you guys here will have like 50 or even 100 emails a day, right? And with that rate of flow and exchanges, right, it's actually so rapid. This means that things will actually go wrong fast as well. So with these two factors in place, what we are looking at is higher risk of data breach as well as data loss. So value of data goes up, it increases the impact of the risk. And as well as the rate of flow and exchanges of data going up, it increases the probability of the risk as well. So as mentioned, with higher risk and data breaches in place, this is where risk management comes in. So for risk management, what is risk management? So it's actually the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling threats to an organization, capitals, and earnings, right? So we will just do a very simple RIS exercise here today, based on the 3 pillars, right? Identifying, assessing, and controlling. So first up, how do we identify? So for this exercise, we will be talking about files, right? So files are actually our building blocks to our daily operations and exchanges. So let's just take some time to actually think about this. When was the last time or that you actually interacted with a file? What was the file for, right? Where was the file? What source did the files come from? And is there any risk if the file has been leaked, right? So this is the part of the identifying process. And once you have identified, we'll move on to the next point, which is assessing. So now that you know that the files that you're interacting with, right, in terms of accessing, if someone saw the files that's not meant for them, right, what are the implications? And also, in terms of the tools that you use, if there is a man in the middle of tech, is there any implications? And if, let's say, you lose your file, you can't find the file anymore, or let's say if you lose the device, are your files being backed up to a central repository, right? What would happen then? And finally, in terms of the last point, the final point, which is controlling. After you have thought of the first 2 points, in terms of control, right? Think about the file. Is it sensitive, right? If it's publicly available, then I think it does not really matter. But what if it's a secret file or a highly confidential file? How are you going to put controls to that file, right? So this is pretty much what risk management is about, right? Identifying, accessing, and controlling. So to summarize it up, it actually comes off with a very, very simple question over here. What could go wrong? So we call it WCGW, right? So this is what most risk professionals would think of, right? So what we will be doing is we'll be showing 2 different scenarios next, showing 2 different types of daily work. So for example, the scenario 1, receiving files from external parties. So the normal process is external senders will send in a file to an internal recipient, and the internal recipient will actually just store it inside their repositories. So if we put in the WCGW in place, right, what could go wrong in place? So let's take a look at the first external sender portion. When you receive a file from an external sender, are you getting it through USB or email? And how do you verify that it is a legitimate source, right? So this is one point that you should look at. And if, let's say, you have verified the sender, how do you ensure that the files are safe and sanitized, right? Or it could be your USB or your email attachment, right? Is it malicious? And if, let's say, the file is malicious, right? There's virus within, how do you protect your PC, right? And the next part is, if the file has been accessed, right, the internal recipient stores it within his PC, and because this user is connected to a network, right, or to a file server, right, the virus spreads through the organization. So these are just the scenario 1, right, of 4 parts of what could go wrong. And just remember this scenario. So we will move on to the second scenario. It's pretty similar, right? Just that this is a reverse where I am actually sharing a file out to an external party. So today, if I were to send out a file, let's say a sensitive file such as pricing, your proposal, or let's say an NDA, how do I do it? I just do a send to an email to an external recipient. And let's take back the same process again. What could go wrong at each steps? So today, internal sender, I get someone to send out a file for me, right? What if he or she actually sends out to the wrong person? It could be a wrong John or Jack or Mary, etc. Right? So email recall, right? I think there's a high chance that it does not work, right? And if, let's say, the file has been sent out and there's actually an exposed link or 2 that is accessed by malicious actor of insiders, right? So What if when I'm sending it, I'm using unsecure Wi-Fi or an unencrypted USB drive, right? The files could be sent out to an external party that has a malicious actor, right? And if, let's say, the files has been sent out to a malicious actor, what will happen, right? He downloads the sensitive file, asks for ransom. I think this is something that nobody would want that in their organization today, right? So this is where we have covered two different scenarios, and let's just go back to how we can actually solve this. So this is where I would like to introduce EasiShare, which is our enterprise file security solution, to actually help to play a small part to help organizations protect and secure your valuable assets. So as we go back to the first scenario, I think prior to that, let me just do a quick overview of what EasiShare is about, right? It's actually a platform where you can actually do a secure, manage, and govern of your files, right? Be it internally, where your team is working with external parties such as your vendors or authorities, or internally, you are able to manage what your employees and your management are actually working on. So basically giving you back the control, you secure your file, and you decide where your data resides. So to that, let's just go back to the previous two scenarios that we have covered earlier on. So the first part, unverified sender sending in the file through email or USB. How do we, what is our approach on this, right? So EasiShare, we do have a two-factor authentication, and we also have a feature which is called file request. And what the internal recipient will be able to do is we can actually do an initiate of the file request, send it out to the person that will be sending in the files, and it will be sent as a secure link, and we are able to do verification of their identity via SMS OTP or your Microsoft or Google Authenticator. So after they are verified, this is where they will be able to upload the files back in. And in terms of the point 2 and 3, we are talking about virus infected, right? If let's say the files coming in are infected with virus, right? How do we handle that? So on EasiShare, we also have antivirus and your CDR scan engines that we can actually integrate to. So what we can do is, with the antivirus and CDR scan engine in place, we can add this process to the previous part, which is the file request. So when the external user uploads the files will be scanned and sanitized, right, before it comes in to your internal network, right? I think other than that, we can also add another second layer of endpoint virus, right, to your users' devices, right, to ensure that the files that are being downloaded does not contain any viruses as well. And the third part, right, once it reaches, if let's say the file is malicious, it reaches into your repository, how do we, what is our approach on that? So we will be talking about ban on SMB, right, as well as backup and recovery. So in terms of ban on SMB, this is where we were introduced back in the earlier years, where we actually applied EasiShare and shared to many government agencies in Singapore, right, due to the SMB ban. So in terms of file servers, they are usually the culprit of ransomware. So as the file servers are actually making work more convenient, file transfer is more convenient, but at the same time, if there is a ransomware present, this means that it will spread at a very fast rate as well. So some organizations, they might not protect all their file servers, right? What we can do here is we can actually put EasiShare as a layer on, pointing it to the file server, right, between the user and the repository, right? So when you are exposing your SMB directly, if let's say your SMB is exposed, right, you can easily do a remote call to execute certain programs. But if the access through SMB is only through EasiShare, right, there's no API to trigger any files. So this will actually reduce the risk in place. And another option is, this is where we can also leverage on CITIC's Telecom CPC's smart cloud infrastructure, right? Utilizing their object storage. And you can also use EasiShare as a migration tool to actually migrate your file server to your object storage as well. And the next part, we also have backup and recovery in place. So on EasiShare, we do have an endpoint backup and sync feature where you can actually easily back up your files, sync your files to a central repository. And the next part, in terms of scenario 2, right? So we mentioned about the staff sharing files to a wrong person. We have a feature that is called workflow approval, right? In this case, if let's say there's a file being sent to a wrong person, we do have workflow approval where we can actually put in place to have a second layer of check, right, from the data owner itself, right? So before the file can be sent out to the external party, the data owner will actually have to do a approve or a reject. And in terms of exposed links or tools, right, this is where we do have similarly two-factor authentication and link expiry in play. So when I'm sending a file out to an external party, this is where I can actually do certain restrictions such as link expiry, as well as OTP to ensure that the external party is the intended recipient. And finally, in terms of malicious actor download sensitive files for ransom, we do have additional features such as your view-only mode, as well as watermark that you can actually do to restrict certain actions that can be done, such as downloading, there's no edit, no reshare. And with watermark, there will be a splash across the document itself. Other than that, there's also a limit of download attempts that you can also set during your sharing session. So before I proceed with the demo, right, just some key takeaways that I would like the audience to take back for EasiShare. So we do have 5 different categories here in terms of data transfer, trusted data transfer. We've covered some of the features earlier on, 2FA, view only, this workflow approval. And just to share, there's also audit logs that's available on EasiShare as well, and file type restriction, as well as monitoring alerts. And for data loss prevention, we also have policy management where you can restrict actions that can be done to a certain classification of files, for example, right? And for file policy compliance, this is where you can use EasiShare to define your access control, granular file controls, and all of the file and folder activities are captured inside our audit logs. And for BCP, we mentioned earlier on, you can use EasiShare as an endpoint backup and sync. And for data management, this is where you can also use EasiShare as a centralized control over your data access across multiple data repositories. Right, with that, let me just do a simple demo of what EasiShare is. So over here, as you can see from my screen, this is the EasiShare interface, right? What you can see is the users will actually access EasiShare, and it's quite similar to how their normal File Explorer actually looks like today. So on their left, this is where they have access to all of their different drives, right? And on the right, this is where they have all their folders, their files, etc. So moving back to what we have covered earlier on, the 2 different scenarios. The first scenario, what if I want to request a file from an external party? So on EasiShare, you can easily do a file request. You can type in the file request name, for example, let's say claims for December, right? So you can add in the recipient email address. You can also protect your link with an OTP, right? Other than sending out to a single recipient, you can also send it across as a group, right? You can also send it across as multiple parties as well, right? And over here, you can key in a message. right? You can set a link expiry as mentioned. You can turn on the OTP, you can set notifications. There's also advanced options where you can also limit the number of attempts as well as the file size limit and file type restrictions as well. So once that's done, the external recipient will receive it as an email with a link within. So once they click on the link, right, this is where they will be prompted to do an upload of the files. And because it has been protected with an OTP, this is where they will have to key in the OTP before they can access it. Only after keying in the OTP, that's where they will be able to, put in files that you would like to send in, right? For example, I would like to upload a finance document, right? So this is where they will be able to do an upload back into the internal party. And on the internal party end, this is where they can take a look at the file requests, claims for December, and they will be able to access the documents over here. So moving on to scenario 2, if I would like to share out a file to an external party, right, you can do so just by selecting the files that you want to send it across. You can send it across as a single file, you can send it across as a multiple file or even folders as well. So if, let's say, I want to do a sharing, so it's similar. You can set link expiry, OTP. You can also share it across as a view-only mode. And similarly, notification, number of attempts as well. So once the file has been sent out to the external party, they will receive it also as an email, right? Saying that, right, please view this particular document. So on EasiShare, we do have two types of, we do have various types of authentication methods. Earlier on, I was doing it via SMS. So we also have Google Authenticator in place as well. So only then they will be able to view the files. So this has been shared across as a view-only permission. There's no downloads to it. And the files can only be opened up within the browser itself. So in this case, you can see that there's no download and there is actually a watermark that is splashed across the document. And the watermark is customizable as well. Right, so moving back, I think we shared about how to do a file sharing, right? So it's just as simple as right-click, do a share. But in this case, I'm trying to share out an annual report, Project ABC, that has been tagged as confidential and sensitive. So because of our policy management, this is where it's actually disabled certain sort of sharing. So on EasiShare, we also have a central admin portal that takes care of all these different settings, right? Such as your document tagging. This is where the file has been tagged as confidential and there's no sharing. That's why it is unable to share. And in terms of the final part that I would like to showcase would be on EasiShare, we do have the user audit report where you can actually track all of the login activities from your username, login ID, device name, IP address, and you can also check what are the file operations, the sharing operation that I've done earlier on. You can also see the guest operations over here. And all of this information can be extracted and filtered to a particular date range and extracted out. Yep. And finally, we also have an admin audit report where you can check the admin logins as well as the admin operations, right? Changes that has been done, as well as the past and the present value. Yep. So that's pretty much it for EasiShare. So maybe let me just pass it back to Kam Singh. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Brian and Shahan, for the insightful sharing. So there are a few questions online, so maybe I can bring Brian back here with us.
Thank you, Kam Seng. So to answer the GPU question, the answer is first, GPU, it's not going to be on multi-tenant environment. Definitely it will not be a public cloud. And subsequently, we also need to understand the needs of having a GPU setup. So I would say for this question, it goes back to the SmartCloud Compute V1. So that is a tailor-made kind of requirements when that comes in with GPU. So hopefully I can answer this question well. Pass back to Kam Seng.
Thanks, Brian. While you are there, can I also trouble you to answer the second question? And that is, can I bring my own firewall into SmartCloud?
Sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah. So in terms of firewall itself, for public cloud space, we encourage a virtual firewall. We work with Fortinet, which most of our cloud space right now in SmartClouds, we actually use Fortinet. And if let's say there is certain requirements or specific requirements, you want to work with other brands, do raise it up to us, then we will get the internal submissions and approvals. It shouldn't be that much of a challenge, but in terms of physical equipment into a public cloud, the answer is no. But then again, if it's going to be a private cloud, yes, you can have your own physical firewalls equipments to be inside this machine, in your this private cloud V1 itself. That's not an issue actually. Yeah, hope that answers the questions over here.
Hey, thanks, Brian, for the answers. There are two questions that are directed towards EasiShare, so I will direct those to Shahan to answer. The first question is, how does EasiShare support collaboration? I guess that refers to collaboration within the team or the same organization on certain documents. So maybe Shahan can answer that before we go on to the second question.
Yep, sure. So for EasiShare, we do support collaboration, and how do we do it is there's actually a few parts to it. So in terms of collaboration, this is where we also have a feature that is called manage folder. So the data owner will be able to do a manage folder to the respective team or be it internally or externally, right? They are able to do manage folder to them. And this is where they can also provide different permissions, such as owner, author, contributor, or reader, right, to them. And this is where they will have different access rights to that, right?
Okay, great. Thanks, Shahan. The second question is about EasiShare, whether it is available only on the web, or does it have its own application?
Yep. So for EasiShare, what I've shared earlier on is actually the web portal. So we also have our desktop client that's available on Mac or Windows. And there's also mobile apps as well, which supports Android and iOS.
Great. I think that answers the question. One last question on EasiShare. Can I share files with users who does not have EasiShare account?
Yes, you can. So be it file sharing or file receiving, the person that's actually sending in the files or receiving the files does not need to have EasiShare account.